Hello, ambitious English learners, and a very warm welcome back to Podcast English. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join us today as we embark on the final exhilarating story in our current Level B1 series. At Podcast English, our core mission is to make your language learning experience not just effective, but truly captivating and profoundly inspiring. We meticulously craft compelling narratives designed to significantly boost your listening comprehension, enrich your vocabulary, and help you grasp more intricate English grammar in a natural, immersive context. Today's story is the culmination of our journey at Level B1. This means you'll continue to encounter a rich tapestry of nuanced vocabulary, elaborate sentence structures, and a steady, clear storytelling pace. Our primary aim is to offer a stimulating yet entirely achievable challenge, empowering you to build confidence and fluency with every listen. And as always, our stories are more than just language lessons. They deliver profound messages and timeless life lessons that deeply resonate with real human experiences, the drive to innovate, the courage to fail, and the triumph of persistent dreaming. Today's inspiring story is about a grand ambition, the many challenges on the path to success, and the extraordinary power of never giving up on your biggest dreams. It's called The Inventor's Grandest Dream. So, open your ears and your mind, listen closely, and let's witness this incredible journey unfold together. In a small, cluttered workshop at the edge of town, surrounded by gears, wires, blueprints, and the faint smell of oil and sawdust, lived an elderly inventor named Professor Alastair Finch. Professor Finch was a man of boundless imagination and unwavering optimism. His hair was a wild silver cloud, often smudged with grease, and his spectacles sat crookedly on his nose. His eyes, however, sparkled with the curiosity of a child and the profound wisdom of a man who had spent a lifetime tinkering and dreaming. He wasn't interested in making money. He was interested in making a difference, in building something truly extraordinary that could change the world for the better. For decades, Professor Finch had worked on countless inventions. Some were small and practical, like a self-stirring coffee cup or a perpetual motion toy. Others were grand and ambitious, like a machine that could predict the weather with perfect accuracy, or a device that could translate animal languages. Many of his inventions, truth be told, didn't quite work as planned. His self-stirring coffee cup often sprayed coffee everywhere, and his weather predictor was once convinced it would snow in midsummer. His workshop was filled with the silent, sometimes comical evidence of these failed experiments. But Professor Finch never saw them as failures. He saw them as learning opportunities, stepping stones on the path to something greater. He always said, "Every failed experiment brings you one step closer to success. It simply tells you what doesn't work." He had an unshakable belief in the process of trial and error.
Professor Finch's grandest dream, the one he had worked on for over 50 years, was to build a machine that could fly without wings or propellers, powered only by the energy of sound. He envisioned a silent, elegant vessel that could float through the air, carrying people or goods effortlessly, without pollution or noise. It was a dream that most people considered impossible, even crazy. Engineers scoffed, scientists shook their heads, and his neighbors simply smiled politely and called him the eccentric professor. But Professor Finch ignored them all. He believed in his dream with every fiber of his being. He had filled countless notebooks with complex equations, intricate diagrams, and detailed schematics. His workshop contained dozens of prototypes, each a little more refined, a little closer to his vision, yet none quite capable of true sustained flight. He had faced endless setbacks. Materials broke, calculations were wrong, and sometimes his prototypes simply exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. There were moments of deep frustration, sleepless nights, and the quiet despair of seeing months of work collapse in an instant. But after every setback, Professor Finch would simply brush off the dust, pick up his tools, and start again. He would analyze what went wrong, learn from it, and modify his designs. His resolve was as strong as the steel he used in his creations. He learned that patience and persistence were as important as genius itself, a lesson he often heard echoed in the perseverance-themed stories on Podcast English. His only companion in this grand pursuit was a young, enthusiastic apprentice named Clara. Clara was a bright and curious student who admired the professor's dedication and his wild imagination. She helped him with calculations, sourced unusual materials, and offered fresh perspectives. She was practical and organized, a perfect counterbalance to the professor's dreamy nature. She had joined him after discovering his incredible blueprints in an old engineering magazine, instantly fascinated by his audacious vision. She was often the one who would clean up after an accidental explosion or cheer him up after a particularly disappointing test flight. One chilly autumn evening, after another failed test of their latest prototype, a small, spherical device that managed to hover for only 3 seconds before crashing, Professor Finch sighed. "Another spectacular failure, Clara," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Perhaps they are right. Perhaps it is truly impossible." It was a rare moment of doubt for the old inventor. The device lay on the workshop floor, a crumpled mess of metal and wires. The air hung heavy with the scent of burnt circuits. Clara, seeing his rare despondency, gently put a hand on his shoulder.
"No, Professor," Clara said firmly. "It's not impossible. It's just not yet possible. Remember what you always tell me, every failure is a lesson." She picked up a piece of the broken prototype. "Look at this. This part here, it vibrated differently this time. And the sound it made before it crashed, it was a lower hum than before. Maybe we need a different frequency." Clara's fresh perspective often helped the professor see things he had overlooked. She remembered her own learning journey with Podcast English, where understanding often came after many attempts and by focusing on different details. Professor Finch looked at the broken piece, then at Clara. A spark returned to his eyes. "A different frequency, you say," he murmured, deep in thought. Yes. We've always focused on high-frequency sound waves. But what if a lower, more resonant frequency is what's needed? Like the hum of a deep bell, or the lowest note on a grand pipe organ. His mind began to race, connections forming. He grabbed a fresh notebook and began to sketch, his pencil flying across the paper. Clara watched him, a quiet smile on her face. The workshop, once filled with the silence of defeat, was now buzzing with renewed energy. For weeks they worked tirelessly on a new design. They experimented with different materials for their sound-emitting core, looking for something that could resonate at a much lower frequency. They spent days fine-tuning the acoustic chambers, making sure every surface contributed to the perfect sound wave. They faced new challenges, new calculations, But this time, they approached them with a fresh sense of excitement, fueled by the professor's renewed optimism and Clara's sharp insights. They used new scientific papers, collaborated with sound engineers, and even listened to recordings of ancient monastery chants, searching for the perfect low hum. Clara also suggested they test their device in a more controlled environment, away from the unpredictable drafts of the workshop. Professor Finch, usually set in his ways, agreed. They managed to borrow a large, isolated hangar at an old, abandoned airfield outside the city. The vast, empty space with its high ceiling and concrete floor would be perfect for their biggest test yet. It offered them a chance to measure every variable precisely, something they couldn't do in their cluttered workshop. The stakes were high, but so was their hope.
The day of the big test arrived. Professor Finch and Clara stood in the center of the enormous hangar, facing their latest creation. It was a beautiful, elegant machine, disc-shaped, made of polished metal with intricate patterns of tiny sound emitters on its surface. It was much larger than their previous prototypes, designed to lift a small amount of weight. The air was thick with anticipation. This was it. Years of work, decades of dreaming, all led to this moment. They had invited a few trusted engineers and scientists who had once dismissed Professor Finch's ideas, hoping to finally convince them. "Ready, Clara?" Professor Finch asked, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Ready, Professor," she replied, her eyes shining with excitement. Professor Finch pressed a large red button on a control panel. A low hum filled the hangar. It was not a loud sound, but a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to fill the very air around them. The floor beneath their feet trembled slightly. The observers exchanged nervous glances, but Professor Finch and Clara watched their invention with bated breath. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the disc-shaped machine began to rise. A gasp went through the small group of observers. The hum intensified, a powerful, steady note. The machine lifted higher and higher, silently, effortlessly, until it floated a full 10 feet off the ground. It hovered perfectly, stable and majestic, defying gravity with nothing but the invisible force of sound. There were no wings flapping, no propellers spinning, just the deep, resonant hum and the sight of their dream taking flight. A wave of emotion washed over Professor Finch. Tears welled up in his eyes, not just from the hum of the machine, but from the immense joy and vindication he felt. 50 years of tireless work, of countless failures, of unwavering belief had finally led to this moment. Clara hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her own face. The other engineers, who had come skeptical, now stood in stunned silence, then broke into enthusiastic applause. It was a triumph of imagination, persistence, and the power of a shared dream. "It flies, Clara," Professor Finch whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It really flies." The sound lift vehicle, as it was later named, revolutionized transportation. It was clean, quiet, and efficient. Cities became quieter, skies clearer. Goods could be transported quickly and silently, reaching remote areas that were once inaccessible. Professor Finch became a global hero, celebrated for his genius and his incredible persistence. He never sought fame or fortune, but he gladly shared his knowledge, inspiring a new generation of inventors and dreamers. Clara became his trusted partner, a brilliant inventor in her own right, helping him refine his invention and create new ones. But for Professor Finch, the true reward wasn't the fame or the success. It was the journey, the relentless pursuit of an impossible dream, and the joy of seeing his vision finally take to the skies. He often visited the hangar, watching his invention float gracefully, listening to its silent hum. He knew that every single failure in his workshop, every broken gear and burnt wire, had been a crucial step on this incredible path. He understood that the greatest inventions are often born from the deepest belief, sustained by unshakable persistence, and inspired by the courage to dream big, no matter what others say. He even shared his story with Podcast English, hoping it would inspire listeners to never give up on their own goals, especially their English learning dreams.
This story, The Inventor's Grandest Dream, offers several invaluable lessons that are perfect for your B1 English journey with Podcast English. First, the power of perseverance through failure. Professor Finch faced decades of setbacks, but he never gave up. Learning English will have its difficult moments and apparent failures, misunderstandings, mistakes. Embrace them as learning opportunities. Your persistence, like the professor's, will lead to success. Second, believe in your vision, even when others doubt you. The professor's dream was considered impossible. In your English learning, don't let others' opinions or your own doubts stop you. Believe in your ability to learn and grow. Keep listening to Podcast English and building your skills. Third, innovation often comes from shifting perspective. The key to the professor's success was trying a different frequency. If you're struggling with a particular aspect of English, try a different learning method, a new resource, or a new way of thinking about the problem. Sometimes a small change can lead to a big breakthrough. Fourth, collaboration and open-mindedness. Clara's fresh ideas and the professor's willingness to listen were crucial. When learning English, be open to different accents, different teaching styles, and different approaches. Work with others, listen to their advice, and learn from diverse sources like Podcast English. Finally, the journey is as important as the destination. For Professor Finch, the pursuit of his dream was as fulfilling as its achievement. Your English learning journey is not just about reaching fluency. It's about the process, the small victories, the continuous growth. Enjoy every step and celebrate your progress along the way. Podcast English is here to make that journey enjoyable for you. Thank you for listening to The Inventor's Grandest Dream on Podcast English. This marks the end of our current 10-story series at level B1. I hope these stories have not only boosted your English skills, but also filled you with inspiration, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for the many lessons life has to offer. Remember, your dreams, whether in English or in life, are always within reach if you pursue them with passion and persistence. If you enjoyed this inspiring story and want to re-listen to our B1 English stories or explore our other levels, please give us a thumbs up. Your likes help us know what content you enjoy most and help other English learners find our channel. And please subscribe to Podcast English for more captivating narratives, expanded vocabulary, and advanced tips for your English journey. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next story, our next lesson, our next opportunity to learn and grow together. We are so happy to have you here, dreaming big and learning with us. See you next time, and keep inventing your best self.